In June I read 3,795 pages across 14 books, listening to 29 hours of audiobooking. I don't think that's too bad considering I had a huge reading slump last month. Additionally, my biggest book was Middlemarch, coming in at 853 pages, and it is also the oldest book I read this month because it was published in 1871. Now, into the books. The first book that I read in June was The Shepherd's Crown. I have finally finished all 41 of the main books from Discworld. How bittersweet. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. No one is surprised. I really enjoyed seeing this. I enjoyed seeing where it looked like Pratchett was intending to progress the story if he'd had more time to write it. If you have no idea what I'm going on about, this is the 41st and final book in the Discworld series written by Teri Pratchett, and he unfortunately passed away in 2016, and so he didn't actually finish the series. It was obviously a long ongoing one, and he had further plans for what was going to be happening with the books that he wasn't able to achieve. This one was the final book, obviously, in the Tiffany Aching series, which is a young witch, which is introduced a bit later in the overall series arc. It is just another fantastic book from Pratchett. I'm really, really glad I read it. I know that some people have been keeping it and not reading it so that they always have one more Pratchett book to read. I'm more of a completionist, so I'm quite glad that I finished it and I got to experience the story. It also feels quite well-rounded. I don't know if Pratchett knew that this had the potential to be his last book, but it feels very finale-esque, nicely rounded off. And we have characters come back from the Witches series who we haven't seen in a little while, and so it's nice to have them all come together and work together along with Tiffany Aching. So we see Agnes again, who we haven't seen in ages, Magrat's coming along, and everyone joins in. This was just a really fantastic end to the series, even if it wasn't supposed to be. Then I listened to the audiobook for The Time Traveller's Passport by a variety of authors. This one was a very mixed bag. The Oliver Blake one specifically I didn't particularly enjoy, unfortunately, didn't like that, but the P. Clark, I believe their name is, I really, really loved that, and I quite enjoyed the Scalzi. I have seen a variety of differing views than mine, but I thought, other than the two that I wasn't really a fan of, it was a really interesting collection discussing the potentials of time travel and seeing different ways that it can be played with by very different authors. So there wasn't too much to say about this one, just because they are lots of different short stories. If I can get it up, because obviously I read this at the beginning of the month. What is Memory? John Scalzi's book was 3 days, 9 months and 27 years, and we are following someone who controls the time travel machine as a member of staff who lets people through and teaches them about how they do this process. And there was a little twist at the end that I quite enjoyed and added a different perspective to the rest of the previous 40 pages, so I gave that one 4 stars. Then there was Making Space by R.F. Kuang, and this is about a young boy mysteriously appearing in the woods, and a young couple then take him on. They're childless, they've wanted a child, and they take him on as their own, and it's how that unfolds and where the boy has come from. I didn't like this one as much, so I did just give it 3 stars. Then we have For a Limited Time Only by Peng Shepherd. This one was quite interesting. So it's a time-travelling salesman, so they take projects that have worked well, go back in time and pitch them earlier to be able to make money with specific companies, and it's this person who's doing that, but he wants to do something different and he's been blocked from it and he doesn't know why, and he finds out why in this short story. Again, 3 stars. Then we have A Visit to the Husband Archive by Kellyanne Bradley, new author to me. Another 3-star one. This one, people can hire out husbands who can be male or female from, like, physical humans from this archive where they're kind of put in stasis, I believe, to have knowledge because they have completely forgotten how any of the form of humanity functioned. There's a lot going on there. Then All Manner of Things Shall Be by Oliver Blake. This was a 2-star read, as I said before. This is vampirical frenemies coming face to face with their immortality. I just didn't care, unfortunately. I found it quite boring and I was looking forward to being finished with it. And then 5 stars I gave to Cronus by P. Clark, and this one A young black woman challenges the indignity of a segregated dystopian future and exposes a time-bending secret. So in this one, she starts getting visions of a past that never happened, and it is people using time travel to manipulate the past so that racial equality never occurred, and people's memories are shifting. Very, very interesting. Really loved that short story, cannot recommend it enough. So, a bit of a mixed bag, a lot of 3 stars, 1 2-star, a 4-star and a 5-star. But I had a really good time with the other ones, and the 3 stars is not a bad rating for me. I still really enjoyed them. The only bad rating is 2 and under for myself particularly. So the 3 stars, I still had a good time with them. I still thought they were interesting. So I recommend this collection. And it also works for my Our Fantasy bingo board for the prompt for 5 short stories. So very good. Then I read Mind Games by Teri. This is one of my 10 books that are going to expire if I don't read them in 2026, and this one I did not know what it was about, because the back does not say much. Luna has a secret, she's different, but no one must find out, because in this world you must play their game or it could cost you your life. Now, that's it. What actually is happening is that people essentially have VR headsets almost constantly. They go to school, they go to work, etc. in these VR headsets, and there are still a few people who are holding out and who are refusers, whether it's for religious grounds, medical grounds, or just personal choice, and our main character Luna is one of those who refuses to use this VR headset, and she ends up being manipulated into doing so in a certain way, and these headsets are being pushed by a company that is pushing governments to do this, and she's finding out about this dystopian hellscape that is going on alongside this. It gets very, very dark. There is also a video game aspect in here because it's VR. You can obviously play games in it, and so that does happen too, and I enjoy a good video game book, I have discovered. So this one I knew I was going to love, I'd just been putting it off because I was like, I know I'll love this, I'll read it when I get a chance. So I'm glad I finally forced myself. It does get really, really dark. It does say mind games. How much can I say without spoiling things? Our main character, as I said, avoids putting herself in the VR headset, but it turns out that she actually has special skills once she is in there, and she is trying to use those to break down the doors and discover what this corporation is actually doing and why they are so pushy and why they are so controlling. Of course, there's many negative things, and she has a few friends along the way who help her or hinder her, and she's trying to uncover this mystery whilst also trying to keep herself and her family safe. So this is a really good YA dystopia. Then I read this comic, partly because I have all of the comics from the free comic book day for this year, and this is the only one that's been added to Goodreads. And I am a little bitch for my stats. So this is the only one I've read, which is Energon Universe. This was a few different short stories combined together. I didn't particularly love this one. I could have enjoyed it more if it was more long form, but unfortunately, 'twas not for me. One that 'twas for me. A History of Britain in 10 Enemies by Deary. This copy is signed by the author. If you don't know, Deary wrote the Horrible Histories books, and they then got adapted into a TV series that he was closely involved with doing, and that is what the majority of British children have been brought up on with their history, as well as a few Americans. I know some of you have seen it. It is fantastic, it is hilarious, it is the only children's show to ever win a BAFTA, which is the British TV Awards, for comedy, even though it's a kids show. It is fantastic, and yes, he wrote that, and this is an adult book. He wanted to call it Cruel Britannia, and the publishers wouldn't let him. So instead, History of Britain and 10 Enemies, and it goes through the various different people we have had beef with and talks about it. So we've got Germany, Ireland, Russia, the US, the Dutch Empire, Spain, France, Scandinavia, Saxony, Italy, and then the introduction. Italy includes Rome. So this is really going back into history, less so of the modern day. They do mention, obviously, the shite that we did with colonisation. He ain't a fan. He's a good bloke, Mr. Deary, and he does then mention that when it does come up. But unfortunately, because we did subjugate the people, it means that we didn't really have much beef with them. It was one-sided, so instead this is about the people that we've had active battles with. It was incredibly interesting and well written, really engaging. I didn't want to put the book down. I was having a wonderful time reading it. It's really well historically researched, but also focuses a lot on the humanity of the things and why it matters that these things were occurring. And like I said, it goes all the way back in time to, I don't know, what is it, like a few hundred BC? Is that only as far as it goes? I would have thought it would have went earlier. Until roughly the present day. So this is fantastic. It's a short book. I wanted to pick it up because it was Teri Deary. And I was like, no, like, you just want to pick it up for the nostalgia, just leave it. And then I went to his talk so I could get it signed, and I was like, okay, I'll grab it here. And I loved it. This was so much better than I was expecting it to be, and I already wanted to read it. So I'm just saying. Then I picked up another collection of short stories. This one is This Time Tomorrow by, hello spreadsheet, Eleanor Wells. I got this one from NetGalley, and unfortunately I was not a fan of this one. I found it quite dull for what I thought it was going to be. The book pitched itself as being all about how women get through these struggles and are able to come out, you know, stronger on the other side, despite going through horrible things, and the community that can help them to do so. But instead, each short story was just about the actual trauma, and then it moved on. And so you're just reading a variety of short stories that cover someone's trauma and then don't really resolve it. You maybe get a slight resolution at the end, but nothing further. And whilst there can definitely be a point in writing these quite dark stories, when you remove the resolution from them and you remove the additional context of what happens after and put them all in a collection, so it's just a group of these, it just felt like a very weird decision. It wasn't written badly, but I just don't think that those snippets of these stories are what should make up a short story collection, in my personal opinion. If I'm wanting to see how women rise from these, I want to see more of what happens afterwards rather than the actual event itself, if that makes sense. On a different note, me and the lovely Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe finally finished Middlemarch by George Eliot. I think Olivia had a better time with this than I did. I think she gave it 4 stars. I give it 3. I still had a great time with this book. We are following 2 primary points of view. We have, is it going to tell me names? I'm bad with this. Dorothea and Rosamund, who are both looking to move into adult life at this point in time in the 1800s. So they want to get married when they're like 18, and they both have different visions for what this is going to be, and we see how that impacts them in their lives, in what they expect their lives to be, and how that impacts the community around them. And this was just a really interesting read. I ended up having very different favourites than I thought I was going to at the start of the book. It is 800 and the rest pages, so there's a lot to discuss in here. I really enjoyed seeing the independence that Dorothea specifically was aiming for, and didn't enjoy but appreciated the accuracy of how much she was restricted in this independence. She has money, she is free to spend it as she wishes, and she wants to do essentially charitable work with it. She wants to be like Joseph Rowntree in real life, and the men are stopping her because they don't think it's the right thing for her to do with the money, even though they agree with the premise. And they keep saying how important it is that she has this money in her life, and yet she cannot spend any of it in any sort of meaningful way. And so it's much more than she's ever going to need because she can't use it in any sort of useful way. So that was a very interesting discussion. There's also discussions of how much love and infatuation has an impact on how well a relationship can last, on the importance of communication with your loved ones, on the importance of heritage and how much it really doesn't truly matter, and how it doesn't impact a person. It's the person themselves that truly makes their own future and their own destiny, and not necessarily their heritage, especially when they have no knowledge of it. It's a very interesting book. I can see why it's a classic, and I am glad I can add it to my shelves. I also want to thank Hannah from Letter M for unhauling her copy to me. Next up was another short story collection. I didn't realise how many of these I read this month, and that is If We Cannot Go at the Speed of Light by Kim Cho-yeop. And this is another one that I read for the Our Fantasy Bingo Board Challenge. It had a book club chat that you need to do for the challenge, so I picked this one up and I loved this one. I had such a great time. This is another set of sci-fi time travel stories. So I was reading a lot about time travel this month, not mad about it. And I just really enjoyed each and every one of these stories. They were well crafted, the pacing of them was really good, and they rounded off really well, but I still wanted more from each one. There are so many of these that I would love to explore more of. We have the idea of being left behind by the rest of society because you were trying to help improve that society, but they moved on without you. We have the idea of first contact. Then there's the idea of first contact having already happened and we don't know. There are a lot of really interesting short stories in this one. Fantastic ideas. I think I need to pick up some more from this author because it was so interesting. I'm very glad I picked this one up. I cannot recommend it enough. I read an ebook copy and I am tempted to add a physical copy to my shelf so I can reread it because those stories were just so good. Like, 4.75. Like, this close to a 5-star, and I don't know if I've ever given a short story collection 5-star, because obviously, but 4.75, it's this close. I loved it. It was so good. Time travel. Time to Burn by Ellery Lloyd. This was sent to me by the lovely folks over at Book Break, and this is a book all about time travel being available now, but only to the ultra wealthy, and you can pay this man at this company to go back in time, or forward in time, if you desire, but no one has in this story, to a specific point, and you can live in that time for a few days, a few hours, and experience it, and then travel back to the present. And you've just paid a lot of money to go and have a little tourist trip. Of course, where people want to go, World War II London. Why? So we start this story there. Our main character is actually a journalist who has been invited along to make a documentary about the company and what it's doing. So she doesn't travel along with them to the past, but she does see the process from the outside. And of course, because this is a work of fiction, things go wrong. I say work of fiction, they fucking go wrong anyway, but things go wrong. And we are following this journalist as she's trying to uncover what's actually happening, whether the things going wrong are just a bad luck incident or whether they were actually planned. The manipulation of time, the changing of events was really well done. There's obviously, when you do time travel, you can't really change things very well. There's always an issue, and this manages to develop that really well. There's also a back plot of our journalist grew up in a cult, and that then interlinks with the rest of the book. I had a fantastic time with this. I really enjoyed every single time I picked it up. It is well written, it is well paced. The story bounces perfectly between the cult that she grew up in back in the day and also this time travel aspect. It all interlinks really well, and I just had a wonderful time with this book. I would like to read some more from Ellery Lloyd now, which is a married couple under a pen name, because I had a lovely time with this one. A much more silly book, Mrs. Bradshaw's Handbook by Teri Pratchett. This is a handbook of travelling the railways of Ankh-Morpork. It's got illustrations, it tells you all about the different villages and towns, and this was just a fun time. There's not much to say about this one. It's enjoyable to read after you've read the railway related Discworld books. I had a good time. Then I listened to an audiobook of the Bookstore Girls by Aono. I struggled with this. So near the end of the month I was slumping real bad, like worse than I have before. I stopped reading for like a week entirely. I was just done. I was done. I was playing on my Switch instead. I busted out some of the old games. I was finito with reading. And so I almost DNF'd this, but I was like, right, you're having a bad time, just leave it and come back to it later. And I'm glad I did, because it ended up being really good. But the beginning of this, so what is the book about? We are following these women who work in a bookshop and their work life, their interactions with their colleagues, the way that it impacts their home life, the way that it impacts the shop that they're running and that they're working at. And unfortunately the actual instigating point that is mentioned in the synopsis of the book doesn't happen until over halfway into the book, and that was quite infuriating. Along with the slump, I was like, I've listened to half of this and it still hasn't even actioned the point in the blurb. So I was quite annoyed by that, but I will say that it is, whilst I don't agree with the pacing, it is well written in that you do then get a feel for these characters and do really care about them and their home lives, and then when the instigating point in the synopsis does happen, you care more about this change. But I still think if you're going to mention it in the synopsis, it needs to happen before 50% into the book. It can't take that long, and so that did not help, mixed in with the slump hours. There's also a lot of sexism in this. That is not the author's fault. That is actually a pro to the author, unfortunately. This is set in Japan, and it is a very sexist environment, especially in the workplace. So she is just writing what actually occurs in the workplace. But it was annoying and grating to read these women being treated worse just because they're women. And it felt very 50s. I was like, please stop. So I had a mixed time with this book. I did enjoy it in the end once I got past that 50% point and we got to see the story progress, and it was enjoyable, but also it did drag. So I think I ended up giving this book 3 stars, maybe 3.2 on Storygraph. Unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend it. The pacing just seems a little off. One for which the pacing was not an issue, and that is The Haunting of a Bronte by Amelia Blackwell. Thank you very much, Book Break. This is the second book in the Miss Darcy Investigates series, where in book 1 we follow a young woman, Georgiana. And does it tell me what year? Because I am bad at this. 1799. So the late 18th century, and we follow this young woman and she ends up stumbling across a pager. And it beeps and she presses the button, and she, in book 1, is transported to the 1990s and ends up helping to solve a murder mystery that has just occurred. Someone has died and she helps figure out who did it. Obviously, with this being book 2, I don't want to say too much about it and spoil anything, but she does travel to a different time period in this one. So she goes from the late 1700s to the mid 1800s instead, and that comes with a lot of different challenges compared to going from the late 17 to the 1990s. That's so different that she must be playing a part, she must be a character, she must be in a film or a TV show or something, whereas this is only about 50 years, and so she just looks incredibly old-fashioned whilst being young. And that's a really interesting dynamic to play with instead, whilst we have the time travelling backwards and forwards throughout the book, swapping between the different time periods, the mystery of the time travel itself, because we don't still really understand what's happening and why, combined with the mystery of what is happening at this house where the Brontes are working. It is a really interesting book. Whilst I was struggling to pick it up because of the slump, when I did manage to get myself to pick it up, I couldn't put it down. So I was having a fantastic time with this book despite slumping my way through life at the time, and this was just such a great read. I love this cosy, quirky time travel crime fiction, and it is absolutely fantastic. I also read this for one of the prompts for our fantasy, which is to do with, it's someone who's solving a mystery but they're not a detective and they don't, do it officially. And they actually, at the end of this, her brother asks, "You fancy yourself a constable?" And she says, "No, I should infinitely prefer the term detective." So it's a good job I did it with book 2 and not any of the further books, because she is a detective from that point on, but she's not in this one. And I really liked this series. I really enjoyed the first book. The second one was just as fun. It is just a blast. It is engaging. The history is well researched. It is linked in well. It is just so much fun. Such a great and more unique prospect, because you have so many mixed genres. You have the historical, you have the mystery, and you also have the sci-fi. So mixing those together. On a very different note, we have a high fantasy, and that is The Hunter's Kind by Rebecca Levene, the second book in the Hollow Gods series. I read the first book for this one, which was The Smiler's Fair, years ago, like maybe 2018-ish. So, 8 years later, finally got here. I had struggled to find a copy of this. I had to get it second-hand. There's just not many available in this specific edition, and I wanted them to match. Yes, I'm pathetic. Still, I had a great time with this one. So, the overall... I'm going to struggle to talk about the first book because it's been so long since I read it, but I can give you a general gist, which is that we have powers from people who worship the sun and also from people who worship the moon. They are very much against each other. They are very much wanting to kind of compete with each other. They don't want the moon to have power, they don't want the sun to have power. And there are different cults around this fantastical universe, this fantastical land. There are different cults essentially that support one side or the other. And we are following multiple POVs from those different cults and perspectives and desires, and we're seeing how this all is conglomerating and coming together with this one storyline of the return of the powers of the sun and the moon that had been vanquished. It is really, really engaging. I really love this story. It did take me a little while to get back into it, I'm not going to deny. Obviously that's because it was 8 years ago that I read the first book in the series, but once I was into it I was absolutely blasting through it and I was loving delving deep into the story. I'm so excited now that I've finally been able to get my hands on book 2. I've owned book 3, The Sun's Devices, for longer than I've owned this, and so now I can finally read that. I'll give myself a few months and then I can finally delve into that, and I'm so excited to finish off this trilogy. I feel like this is incredibly underrated. It is such a great series and it needs more lovers. And then my final book of the month, and I am actually doing this before I finish the book, just with when the videos and stuff need to come out. This is the final day of the month and I will be reading all 100 pages left of this. I am loving it. So obviously I haven't finished it, I can't give a complete full review, but in this book we are set in, go on, tell me the time period. No? Why not? It seems Victorian. No one has mentioned. Yeah, the worlds of Dracula and Sherlock Holmes collide. There you go, there's your time span. And we follow two different women, Sam and Hel. Sam is a researcher for this society that deals with the mystical, like werewolves, etc., and tries to stop them from killing people, keep people safe, and she ends up manipulating her way onto a live case because she wants to try and solve what happened to her grandfather. She has no clue what happened, he just disappeared. And she ends up going on this case with the woman called Hel Moriarty, who is the daughter of Moriarty, and not very liked by him, and they are trying to solve this case of these men dying in Paris. They're getting ripped apart, their hearts are being eaten, and it looks like a werewolf, but werewolves are supposed to be extinct. And these two are trying to dissect that mystery and figure out what's actually going on, figure out these kind of secret societies that are occurring in Paris and how they are interlinked with all of this, whilst also trying to keep working on it because the society that has sent them out there doesn't actually want them working on it and they would quite happily see them fail. And so it's fantastical. It feels steampunk, but it is not, if you know what I mean. Like, it feels like a steampunk story, but there's no steampunk in it. That's the vibe that it gives. And the mystery solving, the interaction between the two women as they learn to trust each other more and learn that it's them against this society that actually sent them out there, who doesn't want to see them succeed. These women who are doing this in a time where it's illegal for women to wear trousers in Paris, and they're trying to solve this mystery, these murders that are quite dark and gruesome, and so of course, oh, it shouldn't be seen by a lady. And they are delving into secret societies, they're delving into magic, into mysticism, and I am having an absolute blast with this book. I ordered, let it come through Wayward Souls, which is the second book in the series, before I read this one, and I was like, okay, I shouldn't, it's a matching special edition, and I was like, probably not a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm so glad I did, because I'm absolutely loving this. This is just so much fun. And this is the big stack of books that I read in June, considering I was slumping. I really don't think that's too bad, so please let me know down in the comments, have you read any of these? I would love to chat about them. I am pretty happy with the books that I read. I think I did alright. So, thank you so much for watching, folks, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!